So let's watch a video.
DSS is threatening to take away children from parents in Western North Carolina because they're homeless. Red Cross, the one that people donated millions of dollars to, has decided there's no longer a need for them in Western North Carolina and has started closing down their shelter with almost zero notice. So far, they've closed down 3, Old Fort, Marion, and Clyde, leaving hundreds without shelter, and by the time they close all their shelters, thousands. Basically telling them to figure it out themselves, and then having DSS come in and say, well, if you can't figure it out, I'm going to take your kid because you're homeless. You've got to be freaking kidding me. You have got to be freaking kidding me.
So, can DCS do this? They can. Under Penal Code 270 PC, the child neglect is defined as willfully depriving a minor of necessary food, clothing, shelter, or medical attention, and this applies to any parent or legal guardian who fails to provide those basic needs for a minor child or care. Now, if you live in a tent, can they take your child away? Is that considered neglect? Well, no. They cannot just take your child if you are living in a tent. But it can be considered that you are not giving them adequate housing. Now, a lot has been said about FEMA, the Red Cross. Now, FEMA had up to 10 days to initially first come in when the disaster took place thereafter. FEMA usually stays 2 to 3 weeks thereafter. The Red Cross, they typically stay 2 weeks, and that's about it. So a lot of families are living in these shelters. And when Red Cross leaves, what is their main goal? To provide immediate disaster relief, including temporary shelter. That's the key word here, guys. Pay attention to that. Food, water, hygiene items, and emotional support. They deploy caseworkers for mental health. Now, these teams are stationed at these shelters and on standby for the Red Cross chapter. Now, what is FEMA's job when it comes to displaced children and families in general that are having to deal with such conditions? That is when they get the displaced children. They try to find the family members or guardians. If they cannot, that is when they're placed in DCS custody at that point. Then DCS places them in foster home. Now, what about the families that are still there in the disaster area? Well, once FEMA leaves and the Red Cross leaves, prepare yourself because this is what's coming, if not already happening. You ever heard of condemnation proceedings, when it is identified that the property that is wishes to acquire and issues a declaration of taking? They offer you a buyout program, and this is where the word eminent domain comes into play. That deemed necessary, all they have to do, and your governor does this as well, for public safety, but this requires a legal process and compensation would be provided. But the compensation is nowhere near what your property actually was worth. It's called a quick take. The commandeer must have legal authority to engage in condemning proceedings. Now, under North Carolina law, a landowner facing a condemnation of their land can file a litigation in local court and make various legal challenges to this take. But, however, litigation is a very time-consuming and a lengthy process because the parties have a right to appeal this, and they get to have their own standpoint to the commandeer. Waiting for the litigation to finish is very problematic. Now, this is where a quick take comes into play. A quick take condemnation shortens the process by immediately transferring the title and the possession of the land to the commandeer when the condemnation papers are filed. Now, landowners have the right to accept this amount deposited by the commandeer, but also have the right to file litigation. And this is where it gets very time consuming. Now, even though litigation is started, they can begin construction projects on this land before the court even makes a decision or ruling. Now, you can go look at this case, the Town Apex versus Root. You can call this specialist in quick take commandeer of land if you need quicker answer. But see, they force the hand of the families because the Red Cross leaves, so they have no choice but to leave the area, or the government offers this money and does quick takes. Now, I asked, has the Department of Transportation in North Carolina started or initiated these condemnation proceedings in North Carolina? And it said it had. With no courthouse being there, it's very hard to pull those records, isn't it? So what courts will be the next step I look into? Are these filings done now? I hate to say it, but it has begun. Country Crazy out.